This is a crucial conversation, one that sits right at the heart of the promise America makes to its fighting men and women. We are talking about the largest integrated healthcare system in the nation, the Department of Veterans Affairs, and why a staggering, disheartening number of the very heroes it was built to serve are walking away. They are abandoning the care they earned, the benefits they deserve, and they are doing it because the pain of navigating the system has become worse than the pain of their wounds. This isn't just about long waits, it's about a breakdown of trust, a collapse of efficiency, and a fundamental misunderstanding of the unique needs of the warrior class. We need to look past the political sound bites and the glossy brochures and stare directly into the reality of what happens when a veteran tries to get help. We are going to explore the 7 core reasons why the VA system is hemorrhaging patients, and perhaps more importantly, we are going to dive deep into the innovative, sometimes desperate, steps veterans are taking to find healing outside the walls of the government. This is the untold story of self-reliance born from systemic frustration. The first and perhaps most immediate barrier that drives veterans away is what we can only describe as the appointment abyss, wait times, and access issues. This is the classic, most publicized failure point, but the depth of the problem is often misunderstood. It's not just the initial wait time to get registered or see a primary care physician for the first time. That's just the entry fee to the labyrinth. The real abyss is the perpetual cycle of waiting that follows, a systemic delay that turns acute problems into chronic crises. Imagine a veteran, let's call him Alex, dealing with escalating back pain, a direct result of multiple deployments carrying heavy loads. He calls the VA. He is told the next available non-urgent appointment is 6 weeks out. 6 weeks of pain that prevents him from working, from playing with his kids, from sleeping through the night. He accepts the appointment. 6 weeks pass. He drives 30 miles to the clinic, checks in, and then waits another 90 minutes past his scheduled time because the clinic is perpetually understaffed and overbooked. This scenario is repeated across specialties. The wait for mental health intake can be months. The wait for specialized physical therapy can be even longer. For veterans who are already struggling with the immediate, overwhelming demands of transitioning back to civilian life, finding housing, securing employment, dealing with the invisible scars of combat, this deliberate, drawn-out process of waiting feels like an active form of neglect. It communicates a clear message. Your health is not urgent. Your pain is secondary to the system's schedule. And when that message is delivered repeatedly, year after year, the veteran eventually calculates the true cost of using the VA, the cost in lost wages, the cost in mental anguish, the cost in opportunities missed, and they decide that even paying out of pocket for faster care is a better investment than sacrificing their life to the calendar of the Department of Veterans Affairs. The sheer volume of demand against the static supply of VA providers creates a bottleneck so severe that it paralyzes the ability of veterans to receive timely, proactive care. This waiting game transforms minor health issues into major ones, making the eventual treatment far more complex, expensive, and debilitating than it needed to be. The frustration isn't just about the minutes ticking by. It's about the erosion of quality of life caused by institutionalized delay. We are talking about veterans who need dental work, but the waiting list is so long they resort to pulling their own teeth. We are talking about veterans with suspicious lumps who are forced to wait critical weeks for imaging, weeks that could mean the difference between early intervention and terminal diagnosis. This waiting is not benign, it is destructive. The system incentivizes a reactive crisis management approach rather than a preventive, holistic one. Why? Because managing the bureaucracy of scheduling seems to take precedence over the actual delivery of care. This pervasive culture of delay is the first major psychological breaking point for the veteran who has been trained to execute with precision and speed. They expect efficiency. they encounter institutional inertia. They expect respect, they receive perpetual deferral. This initial encounter with the appointment abyss often sets the stage for permanent abandonment. The veteran thinks, if it takes this much effort just to get an appointment, how much effort will it take to get actual healing? The answer, they quickly learn, is usually too much. This initial hurdle is a monumental psychological barrier that many veterans simply do not have the emotional capacity to continually overcome, especially when they are already battling internal demons related to their service. The energy required to fight the system is energy that should be dedicated to recovery, and the VA, by demanding this fight, often pushes the veteran toward exhaustion and, ultimately, resignation from the system entirely. The sheer logistics of the VA calendar, the constant rescheduling, the lost paperwork for referrals, the endless phone trees that lead nowhere, become a full-time, unpaid job for the veteran, a job they never applied for and desperately want to quit. But the wait times are just the physical manifestation of a deeper, far more insidious problem. The bureaucratic nightmare, paperwork, appeals, and red tape fatigue. If the appointment abyss is the first punch, the bureaucracy is the relentless ground and pound that follows. Veterans do not just need health care, they need benefits. These are intertwined. To receive service-connected health care, a veteran must often prove, through mountains of documentation, that their current ailments are directly linked to their military service. This is where the system transforms from a healthcare provider into an adversarial legal entity. The claims process is notoriously complex, deliberately opaque, and deeply dehumanizing. A veteran submits a claim, often hundreds of pages long, detailing their service history, medical records, and current symptoms. The VA then takes months, often years, to process this claim. During this time, the veteran lives in limbo, uncertain about their financial future or their eligibility for specific treatments. The initial decision often results in a partial or outright denial, forcing the veteran into the lengthy, emotionally draining appeals process. This process can drag on for 5, 7, even 10 years. Think about that. A veteran who served their country is forced to spend a decade of their post-military life fighting the government over whether their PTSD is bad enough or whether their knee injury truly happened during a specific training exercise. This constant need to prove their suffering, to relitigate their trauma in front of strangers, is utterly exhausting. It's a form of re-traumatization. Many veterans simply hit a wall of red tape fatigue. They look at the stacks of forms, the confusing jargon, the endless cycle of C&P exams, compensation and pension exams, where they are evaluated by doctors who may have no specialized knowledge of military life, and they decide that the mental toll of fighting the bureaucracy outweighs the financial benefit of the compensation. They abandon the fight, and in doing so, they often abandon the VA healthcare system that is tied to those benefits. The paperwork is not just administrative, it is psychological warfare. It forces the veteran to constantly dwell on their worst memories, their most painful moments, just to satisfy the requirements of a government form. The system is designed to be slow, not necessarily out of malice, but because of its sheer size and the legislative complexity surrounding benefits eligibility. But for the EE veteran on the receiving end, the effect is the same. They feel doubted, challenged, and ultimately betrayed. They are treated as potential fraudsters rather than honored patients. This bureaucratic nightmare is the point where many veterans realize the VA is not a partner in their recovery, but an obstacle, a giant, slow-moving machine designed to conserve resources rather than expend them on the people who earned them. The sheer cognitive load of navigating the system is too much. It requires an advanced degree in VA policy just to understand what forms to file, what evidence to submit, and what deadlines to meet. Veterans often turn to VSOs, veteran service organizations, for help. But even these organizations, staffed by dedicated volunteers, are often overwhelmed by the volume and complexity of the cases. The VA system, in this respect, acts as a filter, a gauntlet designed to wear down the veteran until they simply give up. And when they give up on the claims process, they often sever all ties, seeking a simpler, faster, less emotionally taxing path to healing, even if it means paying for it themselves. The sheer volume of documentation required for a single claim can fill entire filing cabinets, and the veteran is responsible for maintaining and managing this archive, often while dealing with debilitating physical or mental health conditions. The process of requesting service records, connecting those records to current diagnoses, and then defending those connections against VA examiners who are often skeptical or overworked is a full-time job. This administrative burden is particularly devastating for veterans struggling with conditions like TBI or severe PTSD, where executive function and memory are already compromised. The VA inadvertently penalizes the most severely injured by making the process of proving their injury the most difficult. This bureaucratic overload is not merely an inconvenience. It is a major factor in veteran financial instability and mental health decline, directly contributing to the decision to seek care elsewhere or, tragically, to seek no care at all. The complexity of the VA appeals system, with its multiple levels, Decision Review Officer, Board of Veterans Appeals, Court of Appeals for Veterans Claims, means that a veteran can spend years bouncing between review levels, never feeling closer to resolution. This perpetual state of conflict, where the veteran must constantly prove their worthiness for care, is antithetical to the concept of healing. Moving deeper into the clinical reasons for abandonment, we encounter the critical issue of lack of specialized care, mental health, and TBI treatment shortcomings. While the VA has made significant strides in acknowledging conditions like PTSD and TBI, traumatic brain injury, the actual delivery of specialized, cutting-edge, and personalized care often falls short of what veterans truly need. The VA system is excellent at managing standard primary care and medication distribution, but when it comes to the complex co-occurring conditions that define modern veteran health, the intersection of chronic pain, TBI, PTSD, and substance use, the system often defaults to a one-size-fits-all approach. For mental health, the standard treatment often revolves around talk therapy, CBT or CPT, and heavy reliance on pharmaceuticals. While these methods are valid, they are not universally effective, and many veterans find themselves cycling through different medications and therapists without achieving meaningful progress. They feel warehoused, managed, but not truly healed. They hear the same scripts, the same advice, and they realize the VA is often slow to adopt newer, more specialized, and highly effective treatments that are available in the private sector. Think about emerging treatments like psychedelic-assisted therapy for severe PTSD, hyperbaric oxygen therapy for TBI, or advanced neurofeedback training. These therapies, while gaining significant traction in research and private clinics, often remain inaccessible or heavily restricted within the VA system due to bureaucratic inertia, funding constraints, or an overabundance of caution. Veterans who have tried the VA's standard menu of options and found no relief are desperate. They are willing to mortgage their house, drain their savings, and travel across the country to find a clinic that offers a novel approach that might finally break the cycle of suffering. They abandon the VA because they believe the system offers management, not cure. Furthermore, the specialization required for military-specific trauma is often lacking. A civilian therapist, however well-meaning, may struggle to understand the unique moral injury associated with combat or the specific cultural dynamics of military service. Veterans often find themselves spending precious therapy time educating their VA provider about military life rather than working through their trauma. This lack of cultural competency is a major deterrent, When a veteran feels their provider fundamentally misunderstands the context of their injury, trust evaporates. They seek out private practitioners, often other veterans or therapists who specialize exclusively in combat trauma, even if it means bearing the financial burden. The VA's sheer size works against it here. Maintaining a high level of specialized expertise across thousands of facilities is nearly impossible, leading to a dilution of quality that veterans whose lives depend on effective specialized care cannot afford to tolerate. The veteran who needs cutting-edge TBI treatment, who requires a holistic approach integrating cognitive rehabilitation, vestibular therapy, and nutritional support, often finds that the VA offers fragmented, siloed care where the neurologist doesn't talk to the psychiatrist and neither talks to the pain management specialist. This fragmentation is disastrous for complex co-occurring conditions. The veteran is forced to become the coordinator of their own care, navigating internal referrals and competing treatment plans, which again requires immense cognitive effort that they may not possess. The failure to rapidly integrate and widely deploy truly specialized, evidence-based treatments for the specific wounds of modern warfare, particularly the signature wounds of TBI and PTSD, is a profound systemic failure that directly pushes veterans toward the private sector, where innovation and specialization are often prioritized over bureaucratic standardization. They are looking for the solution that works, not the solution the government offers. This leads directly to the core emotional and relational failure point: mistrust and lack of continuity. Rotating doctors and feeling like a number. Healthcare is fundamentally built on trust. A patient must trust that their doctor knows their history, understands their body, and is invested in their long-term well-being. In the VA system, this trust is constantly undermined by the high turnover rate of medical staff, particularly in primary care and mental health. A veteran might spend 6 months building a rapport with a therapist, finally starting to open up about deep-seated trauma, only to receive a letter stating that the provider has left the VA and they will be assigned to someone new. This happens repeatedly. The veteran is forced to start over, to retell their story, to relive their trauma for a new stranger who has no historical context for their condition. This rotational pattern is not just inconvenient, it is psychologically damaging. For veterans with PTSD or moral injury, the act of disclosing trauma is incredibly difficult, requiring immense vulnerability. When that vulnerability is repeatedly met with institutional instability, the veteran learns a hard lesson. Do not trust the system and do not invest emotionally in the provider. They begin to withhold information, to become guarded, and eventually they simply stop showing up. Why bother investing the energy when the relationship will inevitably be severed by the system? The feeling of being just a number is pervasive. In large VA medical centers, the veteran often feels like a data point in an electronic health record, not a unique individual with complex needs. The appointments are rushed, the providers are visibly stressed and overworked, and the focus seems to be on checking boxes and maintaining compliance rather than genuine patient-centered care. This lack of continuity also leads to critical errors in treatment. New doctors may not fully review years of complex history, leading to conflicting prescriptions, redundant tests, or a failure to recognize subtle but important changes in the veteran's condition. The veteran feels they must constantly advocate for themselves, constantly police their own medical records, and constantly remind providers of their past treatments. This advocacy burden, combined with the emotional exhaustion of retelling their trauma, is simply too much. They abandon the VA not because they don't need care, but because the VA makes the process of receiving care feel like a continuous, exhausting battle against institutional indifference. They are looking for a doctor who sees them, not their file, and they are increasingly finding that stability and personalized attention in the private sector, even if they have to pay a premium for it. The emotional investment required to form a therapeutic alliance is profound, particularly for veterans dealing with combat trauma. When the VA system fails to maintain continuity, it sends a message of disposability. The veteran feels interchangeable, and their history feels irrelevant to the next provider. This cycle of turnover exacerbates feelings of isolation and mistrust, which are often core symptoms of PTSD already. The lack of standardized, high-quality onboarding and retention strategies for VA staff means that veterans are perpetually cycling through new faces, leading to disjointed treatment plans and a profound sense of institutional instability. This instability is the antithesis of the therapeutic environment needed for deep healing. Veterans leave because they realize they cannot build a foundation of trust on shifting sands. They need a consistent, reliable partner in their recovery, and the VA, due to its structural challenges in staffing, often fails to provide that bedrock stability. Interestingly, the VA itself inadvertently created one of the biggest pathways for veterans to leave the system. The rise of community care, the VA's own alternative driving abandonment. Recognizing the severe access and wait time issues, Congress passed legislation creating and expanding the VA Community Care Program. The idea was simple. If the VA can't see the veteran within a reasonable time frame, or if the veteran lives too far from a VA facility, the VA will pay for them to see a private, local provider. This was intended as a solution, a safety valve, but it has become a major factor in veterans permanently abandoning the VA. Why? Because once a veteran experiences the speed, convenience, and often higher quality of care in the private sector, a private doctor who is punctual, a specialist who has immediate availability, a therapist who specializes in their specific niche, they realize just how broken the VA system truly is. The Community Care Program acts as a free trial for private health care, and the veterans like what they see. They get timely appointments, personalized attention, and a system that runs on market efficiency rather than government bureaucracy. However, the Community Care Program itself is still tethered to the bureaucratic nightmare. While the care delivery is faster, the authorization and billing processes are often chaotic. Private providers frequently struggle to get paid by the VA, leading many to drop out of the network. The veteran often gets caught in the middle, facing massive surprise bills or having their treatment abruptly halted because the VA authorization expired or was never properly issued. This administrative chaos forces the veteran to decide: endure the chaos of VA scheduling or endure the chaos of VA billing via community care. Many veterans, realizing they prefer the actual care received outside the VA, simply cut the VA out entirely. They transition from using community care to paying for private care directly. They recognize that if they are going to deal with billing and administrative headaches anyway, they might as well pay cash and gain complete control over their treatment without the VA acting as a slow, unreliable middleman. Community care was meant to retain veterans by giving them access. Instead, it exposed them to a better way of receiving care, demonstrating just how far the VA has to go to match private sector standards of efficiency and service delivery. This exposure is irreversible. Once a veteran experiences a seamless healthcare interaction, the thought of returning to the appointment abyss becomes intolerable. The Community Care Program is a classic example of a well-intentioned policy that inadvertently cannibalized its parent system by highlighting its deficiencies. It normalized the idea of receiving care outside the VA, making the eventual step of full abandonment much easier. The complexity of the referral process within community care often mirrors the VA's internal bureaucracy. A veteran needs a referral from their VA primary care provider, PCP, which must then be approved by a utilization management team, which then generates an authorization number that must be accepted by the private provider. If any step in this chain fails, and they frequently do, the veteran is left without care and often with a massive bill. The coordination of records is another systemic failure. Private providers rarely have seamless access to the veteran's full VA medical history, leading to diagnostic redundancy and fragmented treatment. The veteran is often required to hand-carry their records or rely on slow faxing systems. This lack of integration, even when the VA is paying, proves that the core problem is not just lack of capacity, but fundamental inefficiency and technological fragmentation. Community care provides the location, but not the coordination, leading veterans to seek systems that offer both. For those who decide to completely divest from the government system, the most significant shift is the shift to direct primary care, DPC, subscription models, and cash pay. This represents the ultimate act of abandonment, a calculated decision that their time, mental health, and certainty are worth more than free government health care. Direct primary care is a model where patients pay a low monthly subscription fee, often $75 to $150, directly to their doctor. In return, they get unlimited access, same-day or next-day appointments, extended visits, 30 to 60 minutes, and direct access to their doctor via text or email. For veterans, this model is revolutionary. It eliminates the insurance middleman, the paperwork, and the waiting. It restores the sacred patient-physician relationship. A veteran can text their DPC doctor about a flare-up and often receive a response within minutes or be seen that afternoon. This level of personalized, responsive care is simply unattainable in the VA system. Veterans are willing to pay for this simplicity and dignity. They are trading the complexity of the VA for the clarity of a cash transaction. They view the monthly DPC fee as an insurance premium against the stress and delays of the VA. This shift is particularly powerful among younger veterans and those who are financially stable enough to afford the subscription. They are prioritizing speed and efficiency over cost savings. Furthermore, this cash pay model extends beyond primary care into specialized areas like concierge mental health services, specialized physical therapy, and even preventative wellness clinics. Veterans are pooling their resources, sometimes using their disability compensation checks to fund these private care alternatives, because the peace of mind they gain is invaluable. They are buying back their time and their agency. The decision to pay cash is often a political and emotional statement. I will not be subjected to a system that treats me like a burden. This movement toward DPC and concierge services is a direct indictment of the VA's inability to deliver timely, relationship-based care. It proves that veterans are desperate for quality attention and are willing to sacrifice the free benefit they earn to obtain it. This movement is not just about convenience, it is about restoring the veteran's dignity. They are treated as valued customers in the private sector, whereas they often feel like tolerated liabilities within the VA. The DPC model aligns perfectly with the veteran mindset of efficiency, direct communication, and problem-solving. It cuts through layers of bureaucracy and gets straight to the mission: healing. The clarity of the DPC model, you pay X, you get Y, is a refreshing change from the nebulous, ever-shifting rules of government health care. This shift also includes a growing trend of medical tourism among veterans seeking specialized treatments not readily available in the U.S. or seeking them at a fraction of the domestic cost. For example, veterans seeking advanced stem cell therapies for chronic pain or specialized detox protocols might travel abroad, paying cash, to bypass the regulatory and bureaucratic hurdles of the U.S. healthcare system, including the VA. This radical choice underscores the depth of dissatisfaction with the status quo. They are actively seeking global alternatives to the care promised by their own government, proving that accessibility and innovation often trump institutional loyalty. Finally, veterans are finding profound healing outside of the medical model entirely. Fueling. The peer support revolution: alternative, holistic, and non-medical solutions. Many veterans, having been repeatedly failed by the medical-industrial complex, both government and private, have concluded that their wounds are spiritual, emotional, and relational, not just clinical. They are turning to VSOs, veteran service organizations, and specialized nonprofits that focus on peer-to-peer support, holistic wellness, and purpose-driven recovery. These organizations operate entirely outside the VA and often refuse government funding to maintain their independence and agility. They offer intensive, week-long retreats focused on trauma processing through non-traditional methods like equine therapy, wilderness survival, meditation, and specialized fitness programs. The key ingredient here is community. Veterans are healing through shared experience, guided by other veterans who have walked the same path. They find that the most effective therapy is often simply being in a room with someone who truly understands the complexity of their moral injury without judgment or the need for a diagnostic code. This peer support revolution addresses the fundamental need for belonging and purpose that the VA, focused on clinical metrics, often fails to provide. The VA treats the symptom; these organizations treat the soul. This abandonment of the clinical model is a profound rejection of the idea that a pill or a 50-minute session can fix the deep existential wounds of war. Veterans are finding that regaining their physical fitness, reconnecting with nature, and mentoring other veterans are far more effective therapeutic interventions than the standard VA protocol. They are building their own safety nets, their own systems of care, proving that the most powerful healing resource for a veteran is often another veteran. This movement is characterized by speed, authenticity, and a shared cultural understanding that the VA often lacks. It is agile, responsive, and deeply personal. This holistic approach, focused on restoring identity and rebuilding purpose, is what truly retains veterans, not as patients, but as members of a resilient community. They are not waiting for the government to fix them. They are fixing themselves together. This is the ultimate what they're doing. Instead, they are relying on the strength of their own tribe, turning away from the institutional structure that failed to recognize their human dignity. The peer support model thrives on immediacy and authenticity, two qualities often absent in the VA. When a veteran is in crisis, they can reach out to a peer support network and get an immediate, personal response, often from someone who has navigated the same suicidal ideation or addiction struggle. This rapid, non-clinical intervention is often life-saving and bypasses the dangerous delays inherent in accessing VA mental health emergency services. Furthermore, many of these peer-led organizations focus on reconnecting the veteran with their sense of mission and competence, often through challenging outdoor activities or vocational training. This focus on future purpose rather than past trauma provides a powerful antidote to the helplessness often fostered by the bureaucratic, claims-driven VA system. The peer support revolution is not just an alternative. It is a parallel healthcare system built on trust, shared experience, and radical accessibility, proving that sometimes the best medicine comes from those who understand the wound most intimately. What we are witnessing is not a temporary glitch in a complex system. It is a fundamental shift, driven by a deep, sustained failure of the institution to honor its promise with efficiency, dignity, and specialized care. Veterans are abandoning VA healthcare because the system, for all its size and funding, makes the act of seeking help a secondary trauma. They are tired of the appointment abyss, the bureaucratic nightmare, the lack of specialized and culturally competent care, and the perpetual cycle of turnover that erodes trust. They are making a calculated choice to pay for peace of mind, to invest in personalized, responsive care through direct primary care models, and to find true, holistic healing through the power of peer support and veteran-led nonprofits. The VA system is not just losing patients, it is losing the faith of the community it was created to serve. The veterans who walked away are not ungrateful, they are resourceful. They are simply applying the same mission-oriented problem-solving skills they learned in uniform to their own healthcare crisis. They found a gap in service and they built their own solution. The ultimate takeaway is this: the promise of free care is meaningless if the cost in time, dignity, and mental anguish is too high. Until the VA fundamentally reforms its processes, not just adding more money, but tearing down the walls of bureaucracy and prioritizing the veteran's experience over institutional inertia, the best and most proactive veterans will continue to vote with their feet, relying on themselves and their fellow warriors to achieve the healing they earned and deserve. The revolution in veteran care is happening now, and it is happening outside the walls of the VA. The question is, will the VA ever catch up, or will it remain a monument to good intentions paved over by bureaucratic failure? This is the reality we must confront, and the veterans who have abandoned the system are leading the charge toward a better way.